Today, I'm feeding the new DeepSeek-V4-Pro-0813 model a legacy PHP code base. It's filled with bad practices, engineering flaws, security vulnerabilities. The goal of this video is to see if it can completely refactor it. It should fix all security holes and translate the entire PHP codebase into a Python codebase using Flask. Let's dive into the code and see if it breaks. Now I'll just quickly type my localhost admin, then I'll just type in the password, which is admin123. Then this is our dashboard as it stands. This is our total revenue. So as you can see, it's a working system, but it's just flawed with errors, which we are going to review when we go to the backend. But let me just quickly show you. I tell you how everything works. I click on product here. I can add a new product. Say product name. I can just say product 0.1. I'll leave this. Then category electronics. The price should be maybe $400. Then quantity, I can just type in 10. I'll save product. Product added successfully. And I can go back to product. Then just scroll down to see check for my product. Now this is my product here. I can decide to edit if I want. Maybe update this to 20. Now back to product. This is our new number here, 20. I can decide to delete product also. Aside that, I have customers. I can do same with customers if I want to. Then I can also see my orders. Then user. These are my users. Now let's move over to the backend. So I'll show you the code and show you all the security vulnerabilities. Now this is the code here. If you start from index, for example, we have several of them. One of the things you can immediately see here is that there's no difference. Everything here is packed in. We have our front end, we have our back end, we even have our database here. Everything is just packed in here, so there's no separation of concerns. I've highlighted all the bad practices for each level, so you just see them. For example, now this one here, we have minimal session check, which is vulnerable to session hijacking if no other checks are done. Let me see, where do we start from? So let's just start from the up here, the customer add, and then see what we have. If I scroll up now, from what you're seeing here now, our back end is mixed with our front end, which is a very bad practice as of today's standard. You don't want to be doing that in your code. So for here now, we have our server requests. This is where we post. Then these are email, phone number, address, and all that. So you can see now this posts, they are not sanitized. These are SQL injection vulnerability here. Insert into customer name, phone number, and all that. So we already have a vulnerable code here, which is vulnerable to hacking. Then these are front end. So if we come to customer delete now, for example, let's see if we have another one here. We don't have any CSRF protection, and it's vulnerable to SQL injection too. Then customer edit. Now we have this for the customer edit form. XSS vulnerability, no escaping output. So I went through the whole thing just to highlight all the bad practices from mixing our PHP to our HTML. No separation of concerns. Everything is in one place. See, and our bad practices, query inside view loop. So this is the query here. We're running this query inside our HTML where we need to view our table. Then our database, let's check here. No class, just a raw SQLite connection, no exception handling. That's because here we did if database, then there's no try. Normally we're supposed to do like a try catch error kind of thing there. Then function to run query, vulnerable to SQL injection. There's no sanitization, there's nothing done on it. Then we also have the footer. So this goes on for the rest of the code. We have a lot of them like this, and this is what we want to pass over to DeepSeek to refactor. Not just refactor, but also separate them. So we have a code where we have the front end on one part, we have the back end, we have the database. So that's what we have for this. There's a bad practice here too, as you can see, vulnerable to SQL injection. Then we have product delete, and so on and so on and so on, just like that. So now what we're going to do now, I'm going to open my terminal, then open up open code, then use DeepSeek. I'll now direct DeepSeek to this folder here. Then we start refactoring the whole thing. Then I'll also go through what DeepSeek has done, explain everything, and then show you how the new DeepSeek model works. So this is my terminal now. I'll quickly paste in the path to my file, press enter. Then from here, I'll just open code. So to open a open code terminal. So what I want to do now is to switch, because I was already using the DeepSeek-V4-Pro, the previous one. So I'll just quickly try to switch to the new one using models. Then I'll just look for the new one. Okay, so this is the latest one. This is the one I was using before. So this is the latest one here. I'll select this one. Then I'll put it on high, the reasoning effort. I'll paste in my prompt now to refactor the whole code. And we're not just refactoring a legacy PHP code. We're also migrating into Python. Okay, now this is a prompt. I have a legacy PHP inventory management system that I need to completely rewrite into a modern, secure, and maintainable Python web application. So I went ahead to just give it all the errors and all the issues and security vulnerability we have with the first one, while trying to also tell it to migrate it to Python. So we're going to just give it time for it to completely refactor the whole thing, and then we'll go into the code it has written and then explain every process, maybe compare it alongside the old one. Then we'll check everything and then also run it on the web to see how it works. DeepSeek has completely refactored the code, and then this is what we have for now. So this is the context. This is the token we've spent, 64,295, and then this is what we spent to just about 8 cents. It's funny because we would never have thought that we'll do a whole refactor and then you spend 8 cents. This used to take engineering weeks and weeks of development and debugging. Now these are the files it has created. So it's created another folder which is called inventory.web, and then we have a config, we have a requirement, then we have other files and folder which we'll be looking at also. Now what we want to do is to quickly just start the development server and then check on what it has built before going over to the code part to also just inspect the code and compare it to what we've had before, and then see how it has finally structured our business logic from the backend logic. Now what I want to do now is to just quickly open my command line, and then we'll create a virtual environment, and then we'll also start our development server to see what it has done and then compare it with what we had before. Then also dive into the code and then analyze the code and see how it has separated the logic, and then also fix those security issues. So I'll quickly open my command line now. Then I'll just grab my directory here. Then I'll also create my virtual environment. So that has been done. Then what I want to do now is to install any dependency needed, because if you look here, there's a install requirements.txt here. So I'll just quickly install any dependencies. So I'll say pip install requirements.txt and press enter. Then what I also want to do now is to set up the configuration and database. So I'll just do that, then I'll say yes. Then now what I should do is to start the development server for Flask. So to do that, I'll just quickly do Flask app. Okay. I'm getting no option as -e. Let me try that again. Okay, so now our server is running on port 5000. So I'll just quickly switch over to Chrome, then check on it. Now type in our localhost, then give it the port 5000. This is what we have. So I'll just quickly put in the password, which is admin, and then the username and then the password. I'll log in here. Okay, so it looks similar to what we have with the first one. I'll quickly dismiss this. Then I'll check on product. This is our product page. You can quickly add just to check if everything is functional. Let me quickly copy this ID. Then come to add new product. Add a product name, say product 342. Then type in this and maybe just change this to category. I'll say electricity. Price $5,000, then quantity 200, then save. Okay, so these are products which we just added. This is the ID product name. Then we can also edit if we want. Just change this price to 6,000. Save product updated successfully. Now you can see the price is 6,000. Then I can also decide to delete it. So that seems to be working very fine. So the same goes with the customer and then other reports which we have here. Then let's check on our users too. So these are users. We are currently logged in as admin. Then we also have manager and staff, which are other users. We can decide to add new users. Basically everything is working fine. Settings, you can decide to change the company name and all that. Then I'll just log out now. Then we'll go into the code and then review the code that DeepSeek has created, and then that will be the end for this tutorial. These are folders created by DeepSeek, and as you can see, it's very different from what we used to have. We have different folders here, then we also have different files here. For context, this is what we used to have for the previous legacy code. Everything is just bashed together in one whole file, but here now you can see we have different files. I'll just go through the functionalities of each file, then we're also going to check on the code section so you understand what's going on. So very quickly, this .vmv, this is the virtual environment. This is the folder where all your project external Python dependencies like Flask, SQL, Akeme, this is where they are stored. Then for this PyCatch folder here, it's generated automatically by Python. It contains all the compiled bytecode. What it does is that it makes our application runs faster. Then down to this app folder, this is like our core folder of the application. It contains all our actual Python code, our model, our view, our template, which you are going to see. This is it. So I'll go into that deeply very soon. Then we also have this instance folder here. Our instance folder contains specific data that should not be tracked. So those are things like maybe our local SQLite database and all that. So if I click on here now, you see these are inventory.db. That's what our instance folder contains. Then the script file. The script file is used to populate our database, maybe with like fake data or something. That's why we have the scripts folder here. Then coming down to this env file, this is where we store environment variable, maybe things like our secret key, our settings and all that we don't want to put in our code section. So this is where they are stored. Then git ignore contains files and folders that we don't want to track in our git repository. Config.py, it contains all our configuration settings for our Flask app. It's often split into things like maybe development config, testing config, production config, things like that. Then we also have our README here. Our README, this is like our main documentation for our project. It explains how our project is set up and all our project structure. If I click on it here now, you see this is our documentation here. This is our project setup. Now requirements.txt, it's a list of all the Python packages, maybe their specific versions and all that our apps need to run. Then lastly, this wsgi.py is our entry, is the entry to our application. So maybe for like a production web server, maybe something like Unicom, for example, we point to this file in order to run our app. Now, since we are done with that, let's go into our app folder proper. So for our app folder, we have the three major folder that we are concerned about. Is our blueprint folder, our model folder, and then our template folder. Our blueprint folder organizes our application routes into distinct modules or features. These are like our product, our orders, our customer. Separates that concerns we were talking about in our previous work, like this one now, where we have everything just bashed together. Also, we have our model folder. This contains our database schema definitions, maybe each file here is order, product, settings, and all that. They map the Python classes directly to our database tables using SQL Akeme. We're going to go into that in details. Then lastly, our template folder, it uses the Ginger 2 template engine to define what the user sees. Now, I'm going to go into the models folder, for example, and then because the files are so many, I don't think I'll be able to walk you through every one of them. If not, the tutorial will take too much time. So I'll just quickly check on the product.py in the models folder. Then I will also check on the product.py in the template, and then in the blueprint folder, which is our model, our view, and our controller. So coming to our product file here, this is where we import our database instance, and then this is where we define our product model, and then we map it to a database table. This is the name of our table. And then these are the columns in our table, and each of these is a column. So this is the ID, our name, SQL category, price, and all that. They are all columns, and then what their attributes are. So for this ID, for example, this is an integer, and then it's used as a primary key. While for this name, this is considered as a string. It contains 120 characters, and it cannot be null. So this is the same thing we have with quantity, price, and all that. So this speaks directly to our database. Then from here, we can come to our blueprint and then also check on our product here. So for our form here, what each line does is that I'll just quickly try to go through the lines one by one, so you have an understanding of what DeepSeek tried to do with each of the line. So from feature import, what this does is that it enables modern typing features. Then from flags, import flags form, what we are doing with that is that it's a base class for our form. It provides CSRF protection and then validation. Then from there, we went on to import decimal field, integer field, string field, submit field. Those are just specific field type for our forms from the WT forms. Then we also import our built-in validators to enforce rules on the fields, so they cannot be empty and all that. Then here, this line here, what we are doing is to import our database instance for custom validation. And then for this other line here, we're importing our product model to check against the database. Then we move on to this class product form. This defines the form for creating and editing products. So we have our name field, we have our SKU field, we have our category field, we have our price field too. Then down to our quantity, then these are submit. And for all of them now, we are also indicating their attributes, and then we are also doing form validation, unlike the first one we did with the legacy code base. So if you scroll down, we also have a constructor method here. This is what we call whenever we create the form, and then we have our custom validator method here that's automatically called every time the validates field name, whatever that field name is, whatever it is called. So we call this function here. So we'll quickly move again to our route folder. So what we're also doing here is that we are importing every necessary function for routing, flashing messages, redirecting, rendering templates, and then request, just things like that. And then from here, we are instantiating our database. This is our products table once again. Then these are route listing for all our products here. Then just go down so the tutorial is not unnecessarily long. And then when the user call on the this new, whether it's get or post, this is the route for creating a new product. So it accepts both the get and then the post. Some validations are also done here to make sure that we strip our form of every kind of SQL injection or something like that. Then we also have this route here for every unique product maybe we want to get or maybe we want to edit. Now moving lastly to templates. This is what contains all our view and how the user sees the page. So these are list view. This is just basic HTML, but it's rendered with the Ginger engine. We are getting our form for here. So this is the add new product button we saw earlier at that time when we clicked on the form, and then it just went on to list all the output of the product attributes, product ID, product name, SKU, category, and all that. This is how you separate your models from your views from your controller, unlike the other one where we packed everything into a single place. Overall, DeepSeek did a very good job refactoring the code. I do not want this tutorial to go unnecessarily long trying to explain every line, every folder, but you get the idea of how we have separation of concern and how we've finally refactored the old code into this new one, and then how we applied several security measures so our application is safe and then we don't have any kind of cross-site scripting or maybe any kind of attack. That will be all for now. I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you very much for sticking around. Please like if you find this helpful, and then also click on the subscribe button for more content like this.